Yeah, g'day YouTubers, Tinker O'Toole with another video. Hope you enjoy the video today. Please subscribe to the channel. Any comments, thumbs up. Thanks for watching. Bye for now. Yeah, g'day YouTubers, this is Tinker O'Toole again. Just following up from yesterday's video on this new type of pawl or tooth backstop where it sits in between or just behind the drive link. This is a 043 gauge, so 3/8 low profile, works fine on it. And there was a couple of comments, and the comments sort of mentioned, what you're going to find out is you're going to get a bit of movement on this particular tooth, because when your tooth wears out on a normal, on your standard backstop, which sits behind here, there'll be no movement. But when you use the backstop here, you'll get movement from this link. So you won't get any from here because this is the drive link between here, but the tooth is also attached to the drive link. So this is the only point of movement. So the best way to use this, and maybe I should have demonstrated it yesterday, is that when you push up against the backstop like that, when you push back, you take up all the slack, any movement that's in the rivet, then you lock that like so. So maybe that's the only drawback in it, that you've got to use. So if I was to go to the next tooth, like just say it was that tooth, I'll use my fingers and I'll push back, then I'll lock the mechanism like that. So yeah, maybe some people think of that could be a drawback for them, but what this was made for was for end of life, when your chain becomes right towards the end and you're going to, this is the normal stop, and I've seen these ground right across here like that. Yeah, I've seen them ground almost to a point. So you could use this when your chain gets worn down, and you could swap back to the original one like that. So I'm not saying that you have to use it all the time. I'm just saying that if you look, it works fine, and I'll demonstrate it. It's just for those that may be a bit skeptical. So you come around here. Now what I've done is that I've pushed this up so there's no slack in it, and there's no movement because I pushed the tooth that way. So by pushing the tooth back, you remove any movement, and it'd be the same on the next tooth. So it would be just a matter of bringing the next tooth up, and the pawl or backstop, you'll push back like that, and then the same thing. I've taken all the slack up, so it really does work good, provided that when you do your adjustment, that you push back and remove any slop that's in the tooth, because all chains, when they wear, will have movement. I think you can see that. So you will get this movement, and that's why you've got to make sure that you push it back towards. Even on this chain, this is a 3/8 standard chain, this has a lot of movement because it's, have a look at the teeth, it's worn completely out. Look at that. So if you were to put this one on, then the same thing applies. So you can see that. We'll just see if you can zoom in and you can see that. There's a lot of movement in this chain. We'll take this tooth here. Look at that movement, see? So if you were to lock it in that position, it may go back. But if you push it back, then lock the cam lock, then this tooth will be held. Now it's nice and tight. This tooth is held in tight. There's no movement there. So when you bring the grinding wheel down, it can't go anywhere. It's got the grinding wheel pushing that way, and you've taken all the slack up by pushing it that way. So there's virtually no movement for it. But if you were just to move it along to the next tooth, like that, and just say you pulled it from the back. So in other words, just say I pulled it from the back, and then I locked the cam lock, then you'd find out that I could grind off more than I should. So you've got to make sure that you use your fingers, push it back, and then use the cam lock and lock it in a position like that, and then it's fine to grind and it doesn't move. Now, for those who are thinking of making one of those, look, it's really simple. It's not that difficult, and we'll just go over that briefly. If you've got an angle grinder, get yourself one of these little thin discs like that. They're only 1 millimeter wide. So, and take your original backstop or pawl, and it's just a matter of tracing it out. So if you trace it out with a thin texture, it's just a matter of turning it over like that, tracing it, laying it flat, tracing it, turning it over again, just to get the general shape. That's roughly what it looks like. And then you need to put it in a vise, and you need to bend it. What I actually did here was mark this with a texter and got a thin chisel and just put a little bit of a line there, which made it a little bit easier to bend it, like a bit of a fold line. So lightly tapped it with a chisel just so that it put a little dent in there, and that made it easy to fold over. So for the comments that I got, and I had some really interesting comments, and the comments were legitimate. As I say, you will get movement, but if you push it back, and we'll just demonstrate that where you could probably see that. So the whole thing is, you would normally, like if this was a normal chain and it went to the backstop, there's two ways that people do it. Some people just pull back with their hand like this, that's fine, and then they just lock the tooth up. That's with a normal backstop. So with this, look, it makes no difference to me whether I just pinch the raker in this spot here and just move it to the next tooth. No big deal. And then I just push back and then lock with one hand and then proceed. Now, there's maybe a lot of people don't like fiddling. For me, it's not fiddling because you've got to undo this lever every single time that you move a tooth. So to put your other hand there and pinch it and push it back is no big deal. It's like a lot of these people have got the Stihl USG grinder and they've got the foot pedal. Well, you've got to use your hand to move it to the next tooth. So if you're doing them all day, then maybe I could understand if you're in a workshop and you were doing 20, 30 chains a day, maybe the foot pedal would be a good investment. But for doing the few 4 or 5 chains, just say you come back from sawing and you're doing 4 or 5 chains, I can't see the point of investing all that money in a foot pedal. You still got to use your hands anyway. So it takes half a second just to lock that. I don't see that being a problem. It's more effort to pull this down. It's so easy to use this. It's not like you're going to get hand strain because or RSI because you're locking that on. That is such an easy movement. I don't see it being a big deal, but everybody is different. And some people feel a little bit uncomfortable using 2 hands and using that. For me, it doesn't make no difference whatsoever. Using a chainsaw grinder is less effort than using a file. That's my opinion. A lot of people hand file. I do hand file, but I do find that using one of these is much, much faster. And yes, I do hand file, but not as much as grinding. If I've got 6 or 7 chains to sharpen up, I'm going to select a electric grinder any day over a hand file. But if it's a nice sunny afternoon and I've used my electric chainsaw or one of the petrol chainsaws and I've cut some timber up outside in the yard and I've got 1 chain to sharpen and it's a nice sunny day, I might make myself a cup of coffee and get the file, the Stihl FG2, the file unit, and I might file the chain up. So occasionally I file chains just to keep in touch with filing. But certainly if you were to take your, just say you had a half a dozen chains and you took it down to the local Stihl deal and you said, sharpen me chains. What do you think they're going to sharpen them with, a grinder or a file? Yeah, you guessed it. They're going to use an electric grinder because it's so much faster and so much quicker. And if it's done properly, and that's the secret here, if you do it properly and use a grinder properly, it'll do a factory as good as what the factory do, provided you do it properly. There's an old saying, a tradesman blames his tools. Don't blame your tools. Learn how to use your tools properly and they'll do the job properly. And don't abuse your tools. That's the other thing that a lot of people do with tools. You've seen them using these grinders, and I've seen people use them. And even there's some of the machines that they sell, they come down really aggressive, and I'm sure they must be almost blue in the tooth. So when I'm grinding, if you watched me, I come down nice and slow. Don't come down too hard because you're liable to blue the metal, or come very close to blue in the metal, and you'll change the temper, and that's not a good thing. Look, I hope that helps. There is a little few people that are on the channel that are really interested into this. So I'm really happy with this. It doesn't mean that I'm going to keep that on my grinder at all times. I'll swap back using this when I've got brand new chains. It only takes about 20 seconds to change it. But honestly, I think only time will tell. But I'm very happy with it. It does work good. It works on the small chains. It works on the big chains. It really does work well, and it locks in a position. It hasn't failed once. So really happy with it. Works well. Thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, and yeah, comments are welcome. Bye for now.